Yo, it feels good to be breathing around you again. I thank y'all for coming back. As always, man, I always gotta show my appreciation for you. It's good to be breathing in the presence of kings and nobility, so I thank you for coming over here and being kinsmen with me, because I appreciate being a kinsman for you. And as you guys can see, we got another big one that's affecting a lot of so-called autochthons, who are called so-called African Americans and so-called black people. This issue of asthma is a deeper issue that we're going to have to begin to analyze, because a lot of things, a lot of ailments that are out here are attacking our breath as a people and as a nation. So to get our health back, we understand that through the breath is our healing, and through the breath is our salvation, because our health is the first and the most important thing, because our health determines the level of drive that our temple will have. So without further ado, let's do what we do.
Inflammation is one main cause of asthma. It's often the hidden cause because you might not notice it. In normal lungs, air freely gets in and out of your airways, but either internal factors or things you breathe in like allergens, cigarette smoke, or irritants can make your airways become swollen or inflamed, kind of like how allergies in your nose can make you feel congested and stuffy. Inflammation can cause troublesome symptoms or asthma attacks. But medicines like inhaled corticosteroids that you take every day can help reduce or prevent this cause of asthma. Next is bronchoconstriction, or squeezing of the tubes in your lungs. I know, it's a pretty long word, and it's no fun either. Bronchoconstriction is the cause of asthma symptoms that you might feel as tightening in your chest. In a normal airway, like you see here, the muscles around the tubes in your lungs are relaxed. This lets air in and out freely when you breathe. But with asthma, the muscles might be twitchy and squeeze. Some people say it feels like breathing through a straw.
It starts with a cough or a wheeze. Soon, your chest feels tight. Your breathing speeds up and gets shallower, making you feel short of breath. These are common symptoms of an asthma attack. Around the world, more than 300 million people suffer from asthma, and around 250,000 people die from it each year. But why do people get asthma, and how can this disease be deadly? Asthma affects the respiratory system, particularly the smaller airways, such as the bronchi and bronchioles. These airways have an inner lining called the mucosa that's surrounded by a layer of smooth muscle. In people with asthma, the airways are chronically inflamed, which can make them hyper-responsive to certain triggers. Some of the many asthma triggers include tobacco smoke, pollen, dust, fragrances, exercise, cold weather, stress, and even the common cold. When people with asthma are exposed to these triggers, an asthma attack or exacerbation can occur. But how exactly do such everyday factors lead to an asthma attack? If an asthmatic is exposed to a trigger, the smooth rings of muscle that circle the small airways in their lungs contract and become narrow. Simultaneously, the trigger worsens inflammation, causing the mucosal lining to become more swollen and secrete more mucus. Under normal conditions, the body uses this mucus to trap and clear particles, like pollen or dust. But during an asthma attack, it blocks the narrowed airways, making it even harder to breathe. These effects lead to the symptoms of asthma. Smooth muscle constriction results in the feeling of chest tightness. Excess mucus and increased inflammation can cause coughing, and the wheezing noise? That happens because as the airways constrict, air whistles as it passes through the narrowed space. These symptoms may make a person feel like they're running out of air. Yet counterintuitively, during an asthma attack, the inflammation can make it harder to exhale than inhale. Over time, this leads to an excess of air in the lungs, a phenomenon known as hyperinflation. The trapping of air inside the lungs forces the body to work harder to move air in and out of them. Over time, this can lead to reduced oxygen delivery to the body's organs and tissues. Sometimes, in untreated severe asthma attacks, the body can't keep up, which can lead to death from lack of oxygen. So how do we prevent these uncomfortable and potentially fatal attacks in people who have asthma? One way is to reduce the presence of triggers. Unfortunately, the world is an unpredictable place, and exposure to triggers can't always be controlled. This is where inhalers, the primary treatment for asthma, come in. These medications help asthmatics both control and prevent their asthma symptoms. Inhalers transport medication along the affected airways, using a liquid mist or fine powder to treat the problem at its source. They come in two forms. There are reliever medications, which treat symptoms immediately and contain beta agonists. Beta agonists relax constricted muscles, allowing the airways to widen so more air can travel into and out of the lungs. The other form of inhalers serve as preventive medications, which treat asthma symptoms over the long term and contain corticosteroids. Corticosteroids reduce airway sensitivity and inflammation, so asthma can be kept under control. They're also crucial in preventing long-term damage from chronic inflammation, which can cause scarring of the airways. Inhalers are known to be very effective and have helped many people live better lives.
Now that we have a deeper understanding of what asthma is, now we can dive deeper into how it affects our community at large. We can analyze the risk factors of why it's affecting us as a people, and we can ascertain the information that we need to understand how we can prevent it from attacking us, from getting towards us. So let's get it.
And we need to do something about it. And it's not just the Bronx, it's the city near you. Why are all the neighborhoods with the poor people being polluted with like companies and garbage dumps and like all these kind of things that you would never put in a white neighborhood or a wealthier neighborhood. And I don't want to hear it just because of location. It's not. It's about money. And then these kids are suffering and dying, and it just doesn't make sense. So I hope you liked our article. She worked really hard on it, these two ladies. And thank you for listening to Samantha and Kiara. Okay, guys, so this article is written by one of my students named Rashad W. And his article is about, is money more important than human lives? Flint. The city of Flint was once a prosperous area. Most of the people who lived there worked at one of the major auto factories. Then things for the city took a turn for the worse as many auto companies moved their factories to other countries as part of a free trade agreement and liberal policy. This resulted in many people losing their jobs. It wasn't long before 41% of the city residents were living well below their poverty level. Eventually, the city of Flint ran out of money. In order to correct the city's budget, Governor Sidney appointed Darnell Early the emergency manager of the city. He, in turn, switched the city water source from the Great Lakes to the Flint River, which is very polluted, which has been polluted heavily during Flint's heyday when auto factories was there. The polluted water soon began to leach lead from Flint agent pipe. To prevent the lead from getting into the water, all the city had to do was spend $100 a day for the management of the pipes and the additional of an anti-corrosion agent in the water. However, not a single city official did anything about the lead in the water until they were forced to by massive public outcry. There were cases of people losing their hair and children getting rashes, even women having seizures. Certain records indicate higher ups knew exactly what was happening in Flint. But that's not what the news is reporting. This is a prime example of environmental injustice. Places where poor people or people of color getting stripped of their rights to decent living environment, just like what's happening in the South Bronx, New York, with the city putting all their factories and diesel-related companies in the area where primarily poor people live in there, ruining their air and making them sick. So now that you know the scope, I've got to ask, is money more important than human lives? What's your opinion on this matter? Let the government and me know.
The successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Lisa Godley, filling in for Barbara Ham-Lee. Our topic this week is one that's near and dear to my heart. I recently had a cousin, just 19 years old, pass away following an asthma attack. It really stunned me to learn that people are still dying from asthma in 2011. So I started doing some research, and I discovered, like many illnesses and diseases, that when everyone else catches a cold, the African American community gets pneumonia. According to the Office of Minority Health, African Americans are 4.5 times more likely to visit the emergency room because of an asthma attack and almost 3 times as likely to die from one. Joining me to discuss this important issue are Dr. Melvin Johnson, an internal medicine physician who treats quite a few asthma patients, Elena Adams, whose son is now a hemiplegic following a series of events that started with an asthma attack, and Cynthia Odom, who's with Eastern Virginia Medical School's Healthy Homes Project. They look for things that trigger those asthma attacks and knock them out. Welcome, everyone, to Another View.
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson, I'm going to start with you and with the basics. Explain what asthma is and how it affects the body.
Okay, asthma is a chronic disease heralded by a inflammation of the breathing tubes of the lung, what we call the airway, usually the small airways. It is also accompanied by a over-response or over-activity of those airways, leading to the development of closure of the airways to some degree, the development of increased manufacture of fluid or mucus in the lungs, heralded by the symptoms of what you describe as wheezing, as well as shortness of breath. It tends to be a reversible disease in its early stages, and then as it progresses through the individual's life, can become a chronic disease with irreversible components.
Why is it you find that sometimes in families, one person may have it, one not? Is it hereditary? How does that work?
There is not a clear linkage with hereditary or it running through a family. Certainly, various individuals within a given family can be sensitive to certain things that would trigger their asthma off. We do know that there are lots of external factors that will influence the appearance of an asthma attack, or will mediate an asthma attack, or will aggravate an asthma attack. But there is not a clear linkage. But certainly, particularly children exposed to certain irritants will develop asthma attacks.
Your thoughts on why it's so disproportionate when it comes to African Americans as far as the severity?
Well, there are a number of issues that tend to affect the African American population, but more specifically children and adolescents. And many of these in the category of what we call socioeconomic situations, but more especially related to environmental factors such as pollutants, such as things like cockroaches, dust mites, smoking, things like that tend to be more prevalent with the African American population and children.
Okay. All righty, thank you. Now, Lena, your son, Dante, prior to his asthma attack, was a very active young man. Tell me a little bit about Dante.
He played music instruments. He wrote poetry. He was just like an average teenager.
Okay. And what transpired the day of his asthma attack? Did he have his inhaler with him?
No, he forgot it at home. And he went to the store. And to this day, we don't know what triggered it, because there's so many things that could trigger it. And he just collapsed.
And what happened after that?
Well, after his asthma attack, he started having grand seizures, which they say was caused due from lack of oxygen. And then he ended up having a stroke. And then that caused bleeding on the brain, which caused them to do surgery, which he ended up in a coma. So he was in a coma for like 3.5 months.
Okay. And how is Dante doing now?
Oh, he's doing wonderful. Okay. They thought he was never going to be able to walk or eat, or they thought he was, brain dead, which I brought him home and we worked on it.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, Yoda.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. The level of fortitude that our people still have, although we're being attacked in so many different ways, we understand that we are created for a different purpose. We were created in the purpose of the Creator. So why would we not have the power to defeat such ailments such as asthma? Now, this disease, so-called disease or ailment known as asthma, it's been affecting our people for a long time, but this is the age of redemption, and this is the age of all-knowing. Now, we know that there are many ways that we can combat this problem now. Many things that were looked at and deemed bad in the past, we understand that when analyzed and used properly, everything has a purpose in the hands of the Creator. So we understand that all natural forms of healing can be taken to alleviate this problem. And any problem that's inside of our body can be alleviated if we just trust in our redemption and trust in our salvation, which is our health. So as always, it's good to be breathing with you again. So I thank you for coming back over here. I thank you for understanding that your health is at utmost one of the most things that you need to take care of. So I thank you for even having the ability to even want to know about your health. So I thank you, and I thank you, and I'll never stop thanking you. With that being said, thank y'all for coming over here. If you like the video, you know what you can do. Share it, subscribe, like it, comment, but it's all up to you. I'm gonna let you do what you do. All right. Be safe and be one, bread.